Hello, everybody. I hope you're all safe and staying healthy. This is a test. I'm trying to see. This is the first video I'm trying to upload to YouTube. So, we have a couple of things on the agenda today. And that is one, we have to finish reading chapter 3. If you haven't already, you need to read chapter 3. And we need to answer any questions in the remainder of the notes. So, that's what we're going to start with first, and hopefully everybody has read it. And hopefully you have your chapter notes with it. I thought that we had gotten to the point that we were done with sculpture. If not, and if there's anything else that I thought we talked about sculpture, I thought we talked about glass and fiber arts and all that kind of stuff. And so I think all that's left is the photography section. If I'm wrong, email me, and we'll go over it again, whatever I missed. So, anywho, this part of the chapter focuses on photography. And photography, what is it? That's one of the questions on the notes. And what is photography? Well, the word literally means a picture. Graph usually means picture, and photo means light. So it's a photograph or a drawing of light or a recording of light. Um, People think that mostly it goes back to the Civil War. It actually has gone on long before that, and they were using photographic processes as early as the 14th century. So that shocks people to know, but there is something called. So the first image that we have, which is 355, is a daguerreotype photograph of Frederick Douglass, the great American civil rights activist. And a daguerreotype was made by a man named Daguerre in France, and it became wildly popular. It wasn't widely used by the general public, but it was used. It eventually became, obsolete because it used, I think, a very expensive plate, and that the exposure times were so long. You had to sit still for like, I don't know, 2-3 minutes, or else the picture was screwed up. But then other developments came very quickly, and so most of them utilized what we call film. And film, if any of you were photography majors or have ever taken a photography course and you had to go out and buy a box of photographic paper, it comes sealed in very black plastic, and you can only open it and handle it in a dark room, because the minute it's exposed to light, the chemical reactions in the paper happen and the paper will be ruined. Now, there's ways of manipulating that if that's what you want to do. I know a photographer who made a whole exhibition out of photographs that he made without using a camera. I don't know how he did it, but anyway, it's possible. So most film at that time, most cameras used film, up until relatively recently in terms of history. And a film is a plastic film that is, again, coated with these emulsions that react to light. So most of that was film photography. And if anybody has ever used a pinhole camera, it's very much like that. So what is a camera obscura? The word literally means room in Italian, and obscura, which means dark. So it means a dark room. So what people would do is have a window in a room that was totally blacked out, and they would scratch out just a tiny little hole in that blackout material, and then open it up to let the light come in. It would hit the opposite side of the wall that was treated with some kind of photosensitive chemical. It could have been anything very primitive. So you hear sometimes about spying during the Revolutionary War. People would write notes, and the notes were full of non-interesting things, but then they knew to hold it up to candlelight, and in the back of it they had written in milk, which nobody can see, but when they held it up to the to the candle, it would burn. And so then you would actually see the message. So it's kind of like that. And many of you may have done a pinhole camera. If you've ever taken a photography project, often that's the first little project that you do. And all you need is a cereal box. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jim. A pin. You need to punch a hole through the one side, and then you have a photographic piece of paper on the inside that's photosensitive. And when you release it, it takes the picture. And I think it comes upside down. Does it?
Yes.
It prints upside down. So, and this has been used by artists, believe it or not. Vermeer, who's a Baroque artist, very unlike Baroque painters, but in the 17th century, so 1600s, we know he used it. We knew from written records that he borrowed one. And at that point, it had developed to the point where it's just a lens and a hole and a big black box with a curtain on it, and you would stick your head into the box and put the curtain over it and open the shutter, and you'd be able to see a picture. And of course, it was upside down on the opposite side. So artists have been using this for years. Photography, for some reason, took the longest time to be accepted as a fine art. It really wasn't until like the 20s and 30s that photography began to be seen as fine art, because mostly it was seen, well, why would you take a picture? Why take a picture? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not art. It's not like there was a painter slaving for 40 days over a picture or something like that. But the influence of photography on painting and on the rest of the art world was astounding, because for the longest time, especially in Western culture, art was considered to reflect the world around them and mimic the world around them. So if you wanted to have a portrait of yourself, you had to have it painted or drawn. And now with photography, that was obsolete. Now photography could record you at any given time. So this changed the art world, put it on its ear, because art was no longer, at least according to Western standards, relegated to depicting the real world around them. So it really freed up artists to explore other art dimensions differently, because they didn't need to necessarily depict the real world, because that was obsolete in painting due to photography. But anyway, photography is a real art form. And one of the people that I want you to look up, I believe it's on the notes. No, it is not. But I want you to Google Edward Muybridge, MuyBridge. Edward Muybridge. And he's actually a famous photographer, but he's not necessarily famous for being a photographer. What happened is, this is a funny story, you're going to love this. There was a bet that I think the mayor of San Francisco, back in the day, was an avid horseman, as many rich people were. They had, jockeys riding their horses, and they did horse betting and horse racing. And he had a feud with somebody, a disagreement with another man. Again, another wealthy man who was involved in horse racing, horse betting, hiring jockeys, training horses to race. And he said, the governor or the mayor of San Francisco said, at one point when a horse is, I believe, trotting, all 4 feet are off the ground. And this guy said, that's impossible. How can a horse trot or move if all of its 4 feet are off the ground at one time? So the mayor of San Francisco decided to make a rich man's wager. I think it was like $10,000, which at that time was a huge amount of money, enormous amount of money. And he decided that they were going to take a bet, and he was going to prove him that at some point when a horse is trotting, all 4 feet are off the ground. So they made the bet, and it was a sucker's bet. This guy was so wealthy, the mayor of San Francisco, that he hired a photographer named Edward Muybridge, and he told him, I need you to somehow prove through photography that when a horse is trotting, at one point all 4 legs are off the ground. So Muybridge devised a scheme that was funded by a rich man who could only do this, to buy 10 cameras and set them up.
Tripwires.
And they used for the exposure, to take the picture, actually, they set tripwires across the track that the horse was going to run on. Well, the tripwire is not going to trip a horse, but it tripped the camera to take the picture. So he took 10 sequential pictures, at least 10 sequential pictures. So one every second or so. And when he developed them and put them all together, there, in one of the shots, sure enough, the horse has all 4 legs off the ground at the same time. So I do want you to Google that, Muybridge, Muybridge. And I want you to look up his photography, and you'll actually see that strip of photos of the horse running in motion. Well, this triggered an obsession in Muybridge because this had never been done before. And so he started filming everything. People running, jumping, somersaulting, all in succession with these still photographs that were taken at very quick intervals apart. And to this day, you can still go and get a flip book of Muybridge's photographs, and you can watch birds in flight, you can watch animals running, horses, people, and you know how a flip book works. You flip it, and because all the pictures are being shoved past you that quickly, it looks like you're watching a movie. Actually, animators, one of the first assignments that in any animation project is to make a flip book. And I know this because when I taught at the Art Institute of Philadelphia, I worked actually in the, don't ask me why, the computer animation department, but I was teaching figure drawing. And someone there told me a student kept complaining they didn't want to make the flip book, Well, guess what? The reason that the Art Institute asked them to make a flip book was because MTV, who would come and look at the animation students, said they liked seeing the flip books. Do you know what I mean? So people still do it today. It's a common form of what we call animation. So the thing about Muybridge's work, although he's not really known like as a great photographer like Ansel Adams or Robert Mapplethorpe or a lot of these other people, but what his work did was it was groundbreaking because guess what invention his photography process led to? To motion pictures. To this day, we still call films motion pictures. And what are they? Strips of films with stills taken every regular interval and then projected and ran past the reel, passed through the light and projected onto a screen, and we have motion pictures. Then, of course, we've moved on now to the digital age. So digital age uses no actual film. It's all computer files. So now a lot of things are, although some things are done as film, a lot of things are done digitally. And that's just the progress of technology. So I think that wraps it up for photography. Remember to look up Muybridge. And you should finish reading chapter 3. The next thing that we're going to have to work on is who the F is Jackson Pollock. So I want you to Google that. It's already on Blackboard. Google who the fuck is Jackson Pollock, and it'll come up, and there's a Wikipedia site there. Click on the Wikipedia site, and it gives a very thorough summary or synopsis of the plot line. So I want you to read that, download the Jackson Pollock file, and answer as many of the questions as you can. You may have to use Google. And so the next time, hopefully, that you hear from me on Wednesday, we'll be going over that. All right, everybody, that's it. Stay safe and stay healthy.